Sarah turned 42, sat down with her RRSP statement, and found $94,000. Sounds okay, right? Except she needs 10 times her salary to actually retire, so she's looking at a gap of over $600,000, and with only 23 years left before 65. Every year she waits makes the gap harder to close because that math gets worse the later you start. I'm going to show you what she did next, because she didn't panic. She didn't sell her house. She didn't win anything. She made 3 specific moves in an order that grew her net worth more in 3 years than in the previous 15 combined. And it started with one honest look at her numbers. Hi, Kane here. I was a starving theater grad that started with nothing. 20 years later, I own properties throughout Ontario. Watch my biography video to see my struggles. If there are any discrepancies in the video, please let me know. This is for educational purposes only. If you are going to invest, be sure to speak with a licensed professional. Without further ado, let's get started. The honest look is where most people stop because what they find isn't comfortable. If someone handed you your RRSP statement right now, would you actually look at it? Or would you slide it into a drawer and tell yourself you'll sort it out when things calm down a bit? Sarah looked. At 42, she sat down with her actual numbers for the first time in years and found $94,000 in her RRSP. 2 decades of working, contributing here and there, and letting it grow. Except $94,000 isn't the number that matters. The number that matters is what she actually needs to stop working one day without running out of money in her 70s. And that number is roughly 10 times her salary. The 10x rule isn't something a blogger invented. It's standard math calculated from how much a person needs to replace their income across 25 to 30 years of retirement. Sarah earned around $70,000 a year, so her target sat at $700,000. Against $94,000, that's a gap of more than $600,000, and it didn't appear overnight. Every raise she collected over the years brought something with it. A newer car when the one felt tired, a bigger grocery bill as the kids got older, hockey registrations, ski trips, a kitchen renovation that felt like the obvious next step because the people she knew were doing the same thing. Her savings rate barely moved while her spending quietly expanded to fill whatever her paycheck left behind. Her coworker leased a new Audi. The family down the street upgraded their house. When everyone around you spends the same way, nothing triggers an alarm. The compounding math is what makes waiting actually costly. A dollar invested at 40 grows about $4.74 by the age of 63 at 7% annually. That same dollar invested at 50 only reaches $2.41. Waiting 10 years doesn't just slow things down, it nearly cuts the outcome in half. The median Canadian in their 40s sits at under $100,000 saved. Closing a $600,000 gap takes more than trimming a few expenses. It requires a specific order of operations, and the first thing in that order isn't investing at all. Most people treat debt like it's one problem. It's not. Sarah had 4 different debts sitting on her books when she ran her numbers. A credit card balance, a car loan, a HELOC, and her mortgage, and she'd been paying whichever one stressed her out most that month. That's what most people do, and it's costing her compounding years she couldn't get back. A credit card debt at 20% interest is a guaranteed negative return that no investment reliably beats. Your RRSP might grow at 7% in a decent year, but your credit card is shrinking your net worth at 20% the whole time. You literally cannot out-invest that. The math only goes one direction, and it goes there fast. So, the correct sequence matters more than the total amount. Credit cards go first because the interest rate is the highest, and paying them off locks in a guaranteed return that beats anything the market offers. Car loans go next if the rate sits above roughly 6 to 7%. The HELOC depends on the specific rate and whether the interest is tax deductible, which it can be in Canada if you use those funds to buy investments that earn income or to run a business. Your mortgage sits last because the rate is typically the lowest of anything on your list. Sarah carried $14,000 across her credit cards, and instead of paying the minimum each month, she treated it like a fixed bill with a hard payoff date, and it cleared in 11 months. Carrying that same balance for 5 years at 20% interest would have cost her roughly $15,000 on top of what she originally borrowed. Money that could have been sitting inside a TFSA compounding the whole time instead. There's a shift in how you feel once the credit card balances hits zero. And for Sarah, it was the first time in years that opening her bank app didn't feel like a punishment. That shift is what made the next 2 moves possible. Getting the sequence wrong costs you on both sides. More interest is paid out and a later start date for investing. So you're losing compounding time twice over. And the next move is where that freed up cash actually starts working. Most people pick one account, either the RRSP or the TFSA, based on whatever the person at the bank suggests when they first opened it. And then they stick with that one account for years without ever questioning whether it's actually the right call for their situation. That's not a strategy, it's just inertia. Canada gives you 2 tax shelters, and the order you use them in depends entirely on what you earn. The RRSP works like this. Every dollar you put in reduces your taxable income for that year. So you're sitting in a 40% marginal tax bracket and you contribute $10,000. The government sends you $4,000 back at tax time. The money grows tax sheltered inside the account, and you pay tax when you withdraw it in retirement, ideally when your income is lower, and so is your tax rate. If you're earning about $100,000, the RRSP usually goes first because you're deferring tax from a high bracket now to a lower one later, and that gap is where the real savings happen. The TFSA works differently. Contributions don't reduce your taxable income right now, but every dollar of growth inside the account comes out completely tax-free, and so does every withdrawal, however. It doesn't matter if $5,000 contribution grows to $50,000 inside a TFSA, you owe nothing on that gain. If you're earning less than $100,000, the TFSA often wins because a smaller RRSP deduction doesn't save you enough right now to justify giving up your permanent tax-free growth. And if you're in your late 20s or early 30s and still working toward a first home, the FHSA is worth looking at closely. You get a tax deduction on the way in, and if you use the money for a qualifying home purchase, the withdrawal is completely tax-free on the way out. It's the only account that does both. Once you know which account goes first, automate the contribution to transfer the day your paycheck lands, not at the end of the month. Whichever hits your account first is what gets spent. Sarah automated both her RRSP and TFSA contributions from month 1 before her credit cards were even fully paid off. She knew if she waited, the money could disappear, and once those 2 shelters are running, she went looking for a second income stream to feed them. A second income stream doesn't require starting from scratch or learning something new. Sarah spent 20 years in her field. She knew things that people nearer to that field would pay real money to learn or hire her to do. And that expertise was already sitting there, fully built, just living entirely inside one employer's payroll. The only missing piece was a structure to collect money for it outside of that one relationship. What that looks like in practice varies, but the format matters less than the fit. Consulting on a project basis for companies in your industry. Freelancing specific skills you already use at your day job. Advisory work for smaller companies or startups that can't afford full-time versions of what you can do. A course built around process you've already figured out through years of doing it. Any of these works as long as it maps directly to what you already know. The part most people miss is the structural advantage. Your primary income already covers your mortgage, groceries, the car payment, all of it. So secondary income carries none of those obligations. Every dollar from a consulting arrangement goes straight to investments because you're not depending on it to keep the lights on. Run the actual numbers. $1,500 a month invested from age 42 to 62 at 7% annual return grows to roughly $780,000. Not a salary, not a windfall, a modest side arrangement. Invested automatically in 2 decades, built entirely from knowledge you already have. There's a second reason this matters, and it has nothing to do with the math. When you're pulling income from 2 places, one employer making one decision can restructure your entire financial life overnight. That's not ambition, that's architecture. The people who land fine when a company cuts a layer of management are the ones who weren't negotiating from desperation because money was already coming from somewhere else. Most people sit on this for years, worrying they're not good enough or that no one will hire them. But Sarah started with one client and one arrangement that brought in $1,400 a month by month 9. With every dollar redirected straight to investments because her salary already covered everything else. That structure, once running, is what actually changes the numbers. Sarah didn't stumble onto a loophole or catch a lucky break. She ran her numbers, picked her starting point, and built a structure that ran on its own while she lived her normal life. And her net worth grew more in 3 years than in the previous 15, because compounding only works when you actually start. If you're 25 or 30 watching this, a dollar invested today at 7% reaches roughly $14 by age 63. The same dollar invested at 42 only reaches $4.74, so waiting costs you nearly 2/3 of the growth before you even begin. Pay off high interest debt first. Automate your RRSP and TFSA contributions, and start charging for expertise you already own. Every year you wait, the gap gets wider. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch How Much Canadians Need to Retire in Today's World. Thanks for watching.